So Noreen, it's my understanding you're the vice chair, is that correct?
It's not correct.
Oh, I apologize. So who amongst you would like to start your meeting?
Come on, Angelo, you're
Not me. I don't have any documents. I have no documents, Mary.
All right, I'll take it, but don't believe him when he calls me that. It's not true. So
It's true.
it's only because you guys say it. It was never voted. You know, the little details. First of all, could I ask, we have 3 out of 6. Is that a quorum?
Great question.
See, you don't want me doing this stuff.
No, that's a great question. When we need to, let me just call it up here. And then also ask, is the administrator a member of the committee or not?
Don't know.
I didn't know what past practice was.
Well, it's kind of your budget, right, Joe?
Mm-hmm.
Technically, yep. So I would think you'd constitute as a member. You're the parliamentarian, Joe. You should know this just like that.
Yeah.
Right?
So don't throw that at me, but I do. Hang up one second. Let's see. Rich, Bruce.
I do that. I do that with all reverence, Joe. I know you're very good at parliamentary procedure.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I would say that 3 of 6 is sufficient to start. I'm also going to say that it's understood in the charter that the administrator works hand in glove, and therefore, Noreen, if you'd like, I'll call the meeting to order.
Okay.
And then just ask for each of you for roll call. So from Capital Outlay, who is present? Noreen?
Yes, present.
Thank you. Angelo?
Present.
John?
Yes, present.
And I am present, and we are missing Chairman Rich Larios, member Bruce Nightingale, and member Joe McParland. So good afternoon, everybody. And for the record, I will note that we have Chief David LeBlanc and Deputy Chief Craig Thornton from the Fire Department on, and we're also joined by Lynn Cooper from the DPW Department, as well as Carol Capola, our Finance Director. And Angela, to the point about there are no documents, I was just finishing up with Link and Sean Libby and working with Carol earlier. So the good news is what I'm going to do is update you folks on the votes of the Board of Selectmen, which caused this meeting to happen, and then actions that I'm recommending and pushing forward for next week as part of the comprehensive budget presentation that I have to give to the board based on the charter. And I'm just going to make a reference to facilities maintenance. I'm about to make some changes in there that's going to impact upon the bottom line, and get into the real purpose of this is to have a conversation with the fire chief regarding the acquisition of the pumper, because it may be done, if it is done by debt exclusion, and regarding the roads maintenance plan, the portion of funding that comes from the town, which may also be done by debt exclusion. But let me first start by sharing the screen to show you where we are at for numbers presently. And again, just remind that when I say presently, I have not updated the numbers related to, nope, that's the wrong one. Sorry, Chief. Numbers related to facilities maintenance, and I have updates presently for the committee on that as well, Lane Cooper. So hopefully you can see on the screen there. If you could just give me a yes or no if you can see it.
Yes.
All right, great. So the biggest story, if you will, is right up here on the subtotal, because that's the amount that really relates to town projects for capital inclusive of some community preservation. The additional money right below that, the $177,500, relates to non-town applications before community preservation. And let me just try to keep blowing this up to make it easy for everyone to see. So what we're talking about today is now a proposed fiscal year 22 capital outlay budget of just over $8 million. Now, I will go through in a moment all the updates and changes separate from the facilities maintenance, which I will correct in real time for you all. First, that what I will be doing with finance director is filling in the blanks here between what is being asked for from a funding source and what the balances are. And so very quickly, you'll see that the Chapter 90, the original dollar amount was $700,000. The actual, as confirmed by Governor Baker and his apportionment for the town of Harwich for fiscal year 22, is the $678,332. The free cash amount, as you will recall, was certified for fiscal year 20. That number of 3.9 million still holds. And at present, I'm looking to take 1.6 million to fund portions of the capital plan. You'll see that the public education and government, AKA PEG grants for Channel 18 equipment, the balance is at 1.1 million as reconciled most recently end of month for December 31st. So that was where the 99 will come from. And then you can see retained earnings of 1.4 million, which was certified in fiscal year 2020. However, out of concerns that the finance director has that I share, the wastewater superintendent is actively working to verify his numbers on retained earnings. And so again, I'll be filling in the blanks on community preservation and potential grants will explain itself as I go through. The first point I want the committee to take away is that the Board of Selectmen at their meeting the weeks of January 25th, they had 2 meetings. They made some definitive actions on wastewater, which obviously have come to impact upon the capital budget. Unless there was any questions on the funding, I would like to just then go into the plan itself and go line by line to give you my latest updates. John?
Just a quick question on Chapter 90 funds. Is that for road maintenance?
Correct. That's okay. Our state allocation or apportionment, and it's in the range that we usually give close to 700,000.
Okay, so the remaining 700,000 that Link is looking for, it will be a debt exclusion.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, correct. However, we're going to get into that in a moment.
Okay, and retained earnings, that's just the water department's earnings?
Carol, that's correct, right? That retained earnings amount is, sorry, John, was your question, was that water retained earnings?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's correct. It's just water retained earnings.
Okay, thank you.
Angelo, did you have a question?
Just the same question I always have. What did we spend on this project last year in 2020? And how much money just for this? And has the selectmen decided where the total funds we're going to be able to spend and do or target versus last year?
So I get to the second question first. The selectmen are looking to me to finalize this with the funding sources, and that's why we're having the discussion today, if I've heard your question correctly. But I'm not clear on what you're asking, Angelo, for what did we spend on this project? Are you talking for any of the projects that we're talking about, or?
Total. What I'm trying to understand is when we go to town meeting, we're going to come in with a budget. uh, And I want to know how it compares with last year's, one, and two, how is it compared with the targets that the selectmen have brought up several times? Are we only going to be up 2.5%? Or are we going to be
All right,
up
so thank you.
18%?
No, I understand the question, and to be blunt, I'm not at liberty to disclose that yet. I'm working, once I finish the capital budget, I'm then going back to the operating budget and my presentation to the board. So that material will be released for everybody on Friday, and then I will be giving the board a presentation on that on Monday. That meets my requirements under the charter to present my comprehensive budget and budget message. I can tell you though, Angelo, that I remain in compliance with the board's directive of a level funded budget for operating budget, which you'll see is reductions in the operating budget departments, because we also have to account for the fixed costs that are coming in. Some of those fixed costs, as you already know, are OPEB, municipal health insurance, and other insurances, and the like. But to your overall question, the overall budget message that I will give Monday evening, February 8th, which will include a balanced budget, is significantly reduced from years past and is reduced from last year, with more details to come Monday night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thanks for the clarification. I appreciate that. So unless there's any other questions, I'd like to just go take it from the top literally and work down to advise you as to this. And then once I have it set, I will be sharing this by email with everybody on this committee. And then of course we can get your hard copies over the next few days. So with that, I'll take it down to the top and just go down line by line. Anything that I've highlighted is for me to give you quick updates. So first with administration, slightly modified the project name for walkway design and construction for Route 28 Saquatucket to Harwichport. Previous iterations referred to that as the walkway reconstruction. In reality, it's a design and construction on sidewalks. And so the key words there are design and construction rather than reconstruction. And some breaking news, if you will. The board's already aware of this, but the $400,000 that's listed on that line for grant, it's not necessarily a grant, but rather it would be the Cape Cod Commission's Transportation Improvement Project funding source, because we did hear from the state yesterday that we have passed their requirements for eligibility for TIP funding, which is great news. So that project for that area continues in earnest. You can see the $200,000, which was always in the plan, remains in the plan from free cash, because as we've learned, the original $250 that was set aside was rescinded to help me balance the budget in fiscal year 21. So those are the updates there. It doesn't change the numbers, but I just wanted to make you aware of the great news on the TIP project eligibility and the design and construction.
Joe, I have one very brief update on that. The actual construction cost estimate's $840,000, and I just got that sheet right off the state's website. It was approved, as we know, on the 28th.
All right, so Link, we're going to have to take that offline because I need to work with you and Griffin on that, because I validated this information presently. Then going down, conservation, very quick update. Conservation agent has confirmed that we can defer that funding, and it's not a deferral where we're going to put pressure in future years. The decision actually is based on when we have sufficient material to augment to the artificial reef. Then when we have that, we seek the grant money. We do not presently have sufficient material, and we may not gain sufficient material during fiscal year 22. So that $250,000 grant, which typically technically doesn't impact on the bottom line, has been removed. The next line, the MS4, sorry, go ahead, Noreen.
Actually, back up to the first section.
Sure.
What had been on here was Brooks Academy for
Oh,
$785,000.
sorry, thank you. That was the change that just came in. I didn't have a chance to highlight. Based on votes of the Community Preservation Committee, and I might still have their document.
That's all right.
They did updated votes. And so to that item, you can see hopefully here, they've done some revisions. And I've made the revisions, I just haven't had a chance to note it. So you'll see that to your question, the Brooks Academy structural improvement projects went up from 785,000 to 1.15 million. I do know, however, that David Spitz is actively pursuing grant opportunities as well. And so there's that number may be able to be assisted by some grant funds additionally.
Okay, I thought you were going to tell me it went away, and not that it went up, but that's all right.
No, yeah, no, it didn't go away. It's still in there because the ones that went away I did highlight. Again, just going back to the MS4 Municipal Surface Drain Plan as improvement. Again, eventually we hope to be able to generate enough funds through the application fee process. But until then, to meet our obligations, I'm looking for that 200,000 to be funded through free cash. You may recall the original designation was operating budget, and that didn't make much sense, so I corrected myself and have identified it for free cash. With all deference to Chief LeBlanc, I just want to quickly say we've already talked about the phased police and radio system, and we're going to hold off in a moment on the debt exclusion, Chief, if I can just get through the rest of the plan. Digital fingerprint machine, I know that doesn't necessarily concern the committee because it's under 50,000, but that will be funded presently through free cash. And with deference to the DPW director, we're going to circle back to the vehicles in a moment and to the facilities maintenance. Noreen, to your question on an earlier item, I'll show you here that Lighthouse Field Lighting Project, our partnership with the Harwich Mariners and Cape Cod Baseball is as strong as ever. And the Mariners were able to come up. I'm not going to say step up to the plate. That's too punny. But we're able to offer $100,000 to assist with the lighting project in phase 2. So that takes it off of community preservation and is a great assist.
Great.
Sorry, any questions on that?
So there's sufficient funding now for White House Field to go through, is that correct?
I can't say that at this time, John. What I want to say is that their current phase 2 lighting for White House Field is not going through community preservation because that portion is funded by Mariners. I can follow up with you separately on that question once I can bring myself up to speed.
Okay, because I'd like to, because when does baseball season start?
Hang on for 1 second. Give me a moment. Sorry, I had to take care of an administrative matter. The season is scheduled to kick off June 15th. In fact, I have my schedule up on the wall. June 15th is the opening day. I think opening day for the Mariners is later in the week.
So they can get new lights and new scoreboard by June 15th.
That's the hope. We're still on track.
Okay. I mean, there wasn't any requirements by the Mariners to have that done by that time, was there?
No, not a requirement. But again, we're trying to partner with each other, and it's a win-win for everybody. So,
Okay.
And then, and by the way, I apologize. I'm double booked. That's why I'm trying to go through this as expeditiously as possible. Because after this, I have to have a meeting on wastewater, which now ties into what you can see on the wastewater. So the story here is that there are no capital items related to wastewater in the fiscal year 2022 capital operating plan. And that is based on the board holding off on the 1.5 million. That was the phase 3 for the Harwich share of treatment for DHY. It was incorrectly stated on the plan. The next line you can see there where my cursor is, I'll highlight it very quickly. It should have said DHY CWN Phase 1 sewers, planning, engineering, and legal costs. Again, recommending holding off until at least fiscal year 2023. Again, I've updated the 5-year plan. I just need to finalize that. Didn't have time to do it for this meeting. And then last, but certainly no means least, CWNP Phase 2, Contract 3, Pleasant Bay South. So that would be the third contract if we were going to do the remaining parcels in Phase 2. The board has directed me to use a number of 10 million rather than 8.4. That was a carryover, which is, I think, a wise step. And the board is saying to hold off at least until fiscal year 23 on those items.
Joe?
Go ahead, Noreen.
What about the expenses that go to Chatham, you know, on a quarterly, annual, whatever it is, basis? Where do they come from? The payments, the contractual payments?
My understanding is that that is baked into the wastewater department budgeting and the articles that relate to that. And if I've misspoken, I would beg my finance director to extricate me. But it's my understanding that there are separate funding articles that tie back to the wastewater department.
Okay.
And I think Carol said I'm okay.
No, that's great. If it's not as a separate debt, if it's been built in and we can do it that way, that's great. Thank you.
Carol?
Hi, we do have separate articles for, as you're aware, for the water department budget. This was in September. We had a separate article for the wastewater or sewer fund, and we'll move forward with that. However, the funding to support those costs are generated through taxation. So you'll also see corresponding numbers in the operating budget.
Okay.
Thank you, Carol.
We won't have to add to the sewer fund this year?
I don't think I understand the question.
Well, for a few years, you know, first we put in 70,000 and that was going to be to make up the difference between the residents and the, you know, amounts actually owed to Chatham. And then we put in another amount that included Charlie from Brewster. And, you know, we've used different methods over the last 5 years. So I'm not really sure where we stand, but there was a fund that we added to on occasion. And that I thought was funding some of those expenses, a sewer fund.
Well, so we don't anticipate that the sewer fund is going to be generating. We have not anticipated, I'll say it that way, that the sewer fund will be generating revenue in FY22. Right. And so in order to support that budget, which includes the IMA with Chatham, the town of Harwich, as you're aware, purchased capacity, and then there's a budget that supports that capacity. So we have proposed that budget that will be moving forward next week, but the proposal of that budget is 100% supported by tax revenue.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So I was trying to use that to update the facilities maintenance. Let me go back for a moment. And then one other item, and this was late breaking as well, under the water department. As you may recall, our last meeting was your first opportunity to hear the information on this, but this was related to the parcels, owners unknown, and undeveloped parcels around the town well fields. And the water superintendent was looking at grant opportunities from the state. They still haven't released it, which is concerning. However, in the meantime, I did have a conversation with the Cape Cod Commission. and there are development of regional impact mitigation funds, specifically earmarked for open space. And they've indicated preliminary that using those funds for the acquisition of those parcels is an acceptable use. And so what would happen here is we will pursue that as an MOA through the Cape Cod Commission with both the Board of Selectmen and the Wastewater Commission. And we would end up being reimbursed the $175,000 that would be expended from retained earnings. Now, the story here on retained earnings is these projects amount to about 75% of what is available for retained earnings. So out of an abundance of caution offered by the finance director and supported by me, the wastewater superintendent is reevaluating all of that. And really, it doesn't get to this project necessarily as it gets to the other two. Again, the 175 is a low risk probability that we should gain the reimbursement. And so that is something that can happen fairly quickly tied to the fiscal year. That concludes the general conversation. What I'd like to do now is turn it over. Well, sorry, I'm not going to put you on the spot, Chief, but what I'd like to say is I am still recommending the support of the acquisition of the Quint pumper. And I'm just trying to find it here so that I can update the dollar amount. And if I believe correctly, Chief, I've already lost my notes. That was $1,138,000 on the price for that. Was that correct, Chief?
Yeah, it was 3.5% on the 1.1, Joe.
All right, thank you. And so what I'd like to do is open it up for discussion amongst the committee. But my recommendation, and Angelo, to your question earlier, the board has identified that we should reduce the number of debt exclusions. And we certainly have, and this we've gone from originally 5, 4, and now down to 2. But the 2 debt exclusions that I have remaining are related to the Quint and are related to roads maintenance. And so I wanted to offer first the chief and then the DPW director an opportunity to present to this board with the understanding that I fully support those as presented. And in the meantime, I'm going to try and update the spreadsheet as it relates to facilities maintenance. So if I could, I'd open it up first to Chief for anything you'd like to add.
So, good morning or afternoon, everybody. I think, we all, hopefully everybody is familiar with where we are. I'll do a brief recap where in 2019, we took an engine off of the capital plan and the ladder was scheduled for FY24. We accelerated that to last year, so to FY21, and combined the 2 vehicles together, reducing the fleet by 1 and getting a multi-purpose vehicle that had the capabilities of an engine, but also had the capabilities of a ladder. In the process of doing that, it was roughly $1 million savings to the town. The engine was slated to be about $600,000, and the ladder was looking at about 1.4 in FY24. That number's gone down a little bit as market costs have increased. So, as you can see, we're at 1.138 now. Obviously, COVID delayed town meeting. We didn't have a vote, so it wasn't on the ballot. Obviously, the budget was tight. But here we sit with, the same question. I was at part of the selectmen's meeting where they asked Joe to come back and speak to us about the necessity of this. And I stand here to say that in my mind, as the chief of the department, it is still very important that we replace this vehicle. The ladder that we have, it was bought, originally purchased in '93. Systems are starting to fail on it. Every year we have to have it tested, which is part of the standard. And every year we come back with deficiencies that are costly to repair. And we lose the truck. We lost it for about a month this year. That partly was due to COVID because their mechanics were out. So that's where we stand. It's a truck that we need. It's a truck that we use. By combining with the other truck, it becomes even more critical, not less critical. That engine should have been out of service already. There's some significant repairs that need to be done to that we've been holding off on. So we're going to just keep spending money as we kick the can down the road with the Quint, and the cost of the Quint is going to continue to rise. That being said, I understand the world that we live in, and you know, if the will isn't there to put this forward, then we will make it work. We're blessed that the DPW does a great job with vehicle maintenance and keeps things on the road well past their prime. But you know, that's where I stand right now. Would be to recommend that we still go forward with it.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Chief. Any questions from anyone?
Well, I mean,
Noreen?
Go ahead, Noreen.
you know, we were in support of this anyway. I think this conversation is in response to the Board of Selectmen's question. And despite the world we live in, I don't think we can put it off forever. I mean, we have to keep some basics going in the town. I would be in support of this. I just can't remember if we voted on this back in December or not, folks. So that's it for me.
So Noreen, my understanding is the committee did with the understanding that there was going to be further refinement overall of the plan, and with the debt exclusions, I needed further instruction from the board. So it remains the recommendation of the committee. I just wanted everyone to have a chance to have this discussion today ahead of the selectmen's presentation Monday night. Thank you. John?
Just a couple of questions too, and I too am in favor of this quint, Chief. You know that, and just a couple questions. How long? First of all, Joe, you have $11 million down for the quint.
Thanks for noticing. I wish you hadn't. I already did, because when I went back to it, there was 17 million. So,
I caught it, but okay.
Thanks. I wish you hadn't seen it.
I think he's trying to slip something by here, you know, but anyway.
We'll just buy one for everybody, that's all.
Yeah, there you go. Chief, how long does it take to, you know, assuming that it's approved, you know, at town meeting and the debt exclusion is approved at ballot, how long does it take to place an order before we actually see it?
It's about a year from a town meeting. We could do some preliminary work, but until the money is actually certified and ready to go, it'll be a year from when that money is ready. And not a lot of the work is done. We've already done the specs. We already know what we're looking at. So a lot of that preload work is done, but it's about a year build time.
Okay, so even if we deferred it today, it'd be 2 years before it came back. So I mean, that even amplifies why we should get this thing approved and on the road as quickly as we can. Second one, and you know, maybe this is a conversation you and I can have at a later date, is have you, amongst your other chiefs on the Cape, you know, seeing the escalation of costs of equipment, have thought about pooling equipment that we can share? I know some things are very life sensitive, you know, but it's just a general question. You don't have to spend a lot of time answering it.
So I think, you know, to answer that question, you know, obviously we look to take advantage of each other's resources wherever we can, and our mutual aid plan is very robust. Anyways, the ladder is one of those vehicles that's critical that we get it in there early, because if it's not in there early, then we might as well not have it. It's how we get access to the roof. It's how we get access to windows to rescue people. It carries a lot of tools. It's a critical, like, first in tool. And yet there are multiple ladders around us, but their travel time to get to Harwich is 10 or 12 minutes. So that's one of the reasons why it's so difficult to not have this piece of equipment. By reducing our fleet by one, we are kind of taking advantage of, you know, maybe some shared resources where we're going to rely a little bit more on engine companies or ladders from the surrounding towns to replace that vehicle that's not here. But we still need the basics to meet the road and, you know, meet the mission. And part of that is, you know, currently in each station, we have 2 engines, and then we also have the ladder at headquarters. So when the headquarters engine goes out of service, there's another engine that's there that can take up that slack. With the Quint, what would happen is the Quint would then become that vehicle. But if we drop down below 3 engines, now we don't have a spare engine. So when one goes out of service, we don't have another truck to run in its place. And we were down that road before 2012, when we bought the fleet. We actually purchased a used truck from Centerville and added a 4th engine because we were having trouble keeping 3 on the road. So there's a basic number of vehicles that we need to meet the mission. And with this, we're going to be at the threshold of what that is.
I do have a comment. I think
The
it,
Quint
I'm
does
sorry.
act as a pumper though, right?
What's that?
The Quint does act as a pumper.
Correct. It has the capability of both. It carries water hose and ladders.
Thank you, Chief.
Yep.
Regional approach too.
Angelo?
Joe, I too think this is a very important project to get and to do. My question is, how do we do it with the money involved? And if we're at town meeting, and if the taxes we're asking people are at a level area, there's a possibility that they'll vote for this additional expenditure. If the taxes are too high, it's very difficult for them to vote on projects like this. And it makes it a little dangerous. So I don't know where the taxes are versus last year. I know mine are going up because I've seen it, but is that what's going on with the taxes?
Well, I think it's too soon to tell. I mean, in the sense that, well, let me back up and say, part of the reason why I wanted to have this conversation in this manner today is because you've heard the chief talk about the need for the Quint, and you're going to hear Lang talk about the roads improvements, both of which I totally agree with, and both of those are projects that impact upon the greatest number of residents and taxpayers. It's as broad of a project as you could get to. Both of those projects are contingent upon debt exclusions, which is a very dicey political question right now. And so I know that Chief LeBlanc and Director Hooper and I fully understand the risks that are involved here. What I can't get into now, and it's not for, I won't tell you, it's that I'm still, in the final stages of trying to pull everything together. And what I expect to have happen after I present the budget Monday evening is to have a deeper discussion with the board, and then the board with the finance committee on these questions of, there may be projects that are on this plan where the board tells me to scrap them and use the funding from free cash to pay for the roads and the pumper, thereby negating the need for the debt exclusion. But as far as the impact on taxes generally, it would be premature and irresponsible, I think, for me to answer that right now, because I truly don't know the effect, because no one knows the effect of the budget that I'm going to present. But I can assure you that that is a topic that Carol and I are very much in tune with, and not to put the pressure on Carol, but we understand the great work that Carol was able to do ahead of before COVID. We have the details and information that I think we're going to need to make these informed decisions and to offer more transparency on what it's really going to do. But I'm just not at liberty or prepared to do that right now. But your message is not lost on me. And the message of, the fraught with peril debt exclusions is not lost on any of us. And I think your points are well taken to that.
Well, one of the things we should start doing is looking at other things that we've approved, that if we had to get rid of something, it would go, because otherwise we're going to have problems. And we're going to end up too close to the town meeting and have not gotten into other projects, because I think there are projects in here that are not as important as these. I mean, everybody would have a different approach, but.
No, I don't disagree with that, Angelo. And I'd like to use that actually as a segue to get into some of the facilities maintenance changes that Sean and I just talked about with Link. Because to that point, there are changes that some advocates may not be pleased with, but I think it's a prudent way to proceed. Now, for that, I want to just, again, bring up the bottom line number. And so just as we were going through this, I've been able to update the numbers based on the facilities maintenance, which I'll get to in a moment, and corrected the $11 million pumper to make it the $1.13 million pumper. But again, we've gone from a capital plan that with the deferrals was well into the $20 million range. And over the last few meetings, we were hovering just below 20 million. building off of the selectmen making their decisions on wastewater, which takes out a significant portion of that, but also being directed by them to take another critical look at capital projects and work with department heads to defer as much as possible, we're now looking at a far more reasonable, at this point, $7.5 million capital budget. Now, I'm going to put it out there before anybody asks. When I show you the 5-year plan, it's an eye-popping number for fiscal year 23, but that's also an artificial number. Just because I've taken items from 22 and deferred them to 23 doesn't mean that they're locked into 23. But I don't want anyone to lose sight of the fact that we've made significant reductions in the capital within this process this year. And as I mentioned, I'll try to reduce it a little bit so you can see it. But in discussions with the facilities manager, you will see that what we've now gone to is just under $200,000. And the two items, first, the facilities manager emphasized, and I completely agree with and support and own, that the Brooks Library roof needs to be replaced. And if we don't replace it, we're going to have bigger issues down the line than the trying to deal with how we're going to fund that $148,500. And then 5 Bell's Neck roof repair. First, you'll know that the original number is 20,000, which technically takes it out of your purview based on the capital outlay requirements in the charter. I actually increased that to $50,000, and it's an artificial number that I understand completely to be an artificial number. What that gets to is we need to continue to fund 5 Bell's Neck as a property until I'm able to sell it. Now, I say sell it because, as you recall, my presentation to the board in November is that there is at present a vote of town meeting to lease the property for 99 years. And there was little interest when an RFP to that effect went out. There is definitely interest in parties throughout the town, private parties, to acquire the property and the building. And so to do that, I first have to do a corrective motion at town meeting, a corrective article, which town meeting would direct the selectmen to change the disposition from lease to sale. But as soon as we do that, that RFP for sale will be released. The $50,000 in time may not need to be fully expended. But if there's any delays, if there's any problems, we have money available so that, as I've said to the board, I believe I have an obligation to make sure the building does not implode upon itself while the town is actively looking to sell it. So that change from 20 to 50 is on me, not on Sean, and it's on me to get that process corrected and moving. And then lastly, before I open it up for discussion, the facilities maintenance manager is on board with deferring the generator and the boiler in the old middle school, the cultural center, because he will make sure that those systems are still operational. But he agrees with the discussions we've had before. It's now time where I need to press the issue with the Board of Selectmen. I know there was an original 5-year plan. I know it was extended by 2 years. So I know that we're now in years 4 or 5 of a 7-year evaluation. But I think given the realities of where we are financially and everything else, it compels me to bring the issue to the forefront of the board. So with that in mind, the facilities manager is willing to defer the $70,000 on the generator and the $160,000 on the boiler, knowing that that other conversation is going to come first. And then last but not least, the $55,000 on the remove and replace the privacy fence. It's an older number. The facility manager indicated that it's an older number. And there still needs to be a discussion as to whether we actually are obligated to repair the fence or whether it's a question of simply removing the fence. So because that's more of a neighborhood issue, I've deferred that to fiscal year 23, but there's also another conversation that I'm going to initiate conversation on sooner rather than later. What I'd like to do now is turn it over to the DPW director to speak to the road maintenance plan, and then we can speak to anything on facilities maintenance. But you can see that in the plan presently, we're still allocating $700,000 for roads improvement maintenance plan, offset by the $678,000 plus from Governor Baker for Chapter 90, and the vehicles and everything else we talked about in previous meetings. So with that, I'd like to turn it over. Say again?
Are you all set with Craig and I?
Does the committee have any more questions for the chief?
No.
Thank you, Chief. Deputy. Thank you, Deputy.
All right, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Take care. And Link, with that, you're up.
Thank you, Joe. As most of you know, and some of you have been on the committee a long time, we've had very good success with our road maintenance program in Harwich. In fact, I would say we probably have among the best roads, at least on Cape Cod. And that's due to probably nearly 15 years of support of your committee, of finance committee, boards of selectmen, and most of all the taxpayers approving the bonds at the ballot box. We ran into a snafu a couple years ago with Lower County Road, and that was the first year since I've been director that we had zero money put towards road maintenance. This past year, we cut it in half because of trying to be more frugal, and we currently had $350,000 for road maintenance program. So we've had to go back and reevaluate the entire road maintenance program, and that's Chris Nickerson, our road manager, who has done that. In this instance, as you drive around town, we know we had 9.5 miles of national grid recently resurfaced curb to curb. What you may or may not be aware of is that a year or two before that project, we sunk just shy of $1 million in drainage along the entire length of Queen Anne Road and Depot and South Harwich, so that when these roads are resurfaced, there's no more defects to them. We can walk away from those roads for some time, and we consider them complete. What Chris came up with for a plan in conjunction with Griffin Ryder, the town engineer, was that we should refocus our road maintenance plan to do the same thing in front of the sewer project that we did in front of the National Grid project. That is, put our money into the ground to take care of the old and failing drainage in all of these neighborhoods. So Chris has just given me hot off the presses. I believe he's done with his plan, or very close done to it. And in year 1 and 2 is proposing to put $1.1 to $1.2 million out of 1.4 in the ground ahead of the sewer project. And I think that makes total sense. I do not see paving a road and then over an old block basin that will probably fail or be compromised with construction activities next to it. I think it's an excellent plan that Chris has come up with here. I hope you stand behind it and fully support it. I am acutely aware of the challenges the town faces, both with COVID and financially speaking, due to that. But in this instance, I really think we would be best served, at least for the long run, in staying ahead and putting new drainage in ahead of the sewer project. And that is other than that in drains, we have 100,000 in miscellaneous, 100,000 in crack sealing, and 75,000 in annual line painting and markings. So that's just the normal stuff that we would do to try to preserve roads. No resurfacing, no pavement per se, just enough to do the normal things that are expected, but put the vast majority of the plan in the ground. Be happy to answer any questions.
Noreen?
Eileen, when you say ahead of the sewer project, I guess I was happy to support the 700,000 anyway, but now you say ahead of the sewer project. And, you know, the contract 3 area, you know, we're waiting for data. I mean, maybe we won't have to do that area, or maybe a smaller portion. I mean, I guess I don't know where you mean by ahead of the sewer area, because the contract 1 and contract 2 area are done. Contract 3 is up in the air. Phase 3 is definitely up in the air. So where do you mean ahead of the sewer?
Would you like, so Chris Nickerson has worked with Griffin Ryder extensively on this, and I could list you the roads that are in front of me.
Well, just tell me the areas, you know, in terms of the wastewater plan.
Bay Road, Continental Drive.
Okay, so those are in phase 2, contract 2. Those
Yes.
two you just said. So, I mean, that's already dug up. So how do you get ahead of it next year?
Phase 2, contract 3.
Well, but contract 3, we don't know yet. I mean, we might have removed enough nitrogen between Muddy Creek and other efforts. We may not even have to do contract 3. I don't know about this. You know, I was totally in support of the 700,000, but now I'm nervous because we've made so many missteps with our wastewater direction. And to me right now, everything is in flux. I mean, I can make no guarantee that we're going to go to the contract 3 area of phase 2.
So let me answer it like this. Even if the sewer project didn't go, none of what we're doing would be replacing modern phase MS4 compliant basins. Meaning if there were any new basins in the ground, we would not redo them if they were function and compliant. This is taking care of neighborhoods that are 20, 30, 40 years old.
Oh, right, I know. But there may in fact be other neighborhoods that are 20, 25, 30. I'm just saying to use the wastewater logic as the basis for a plan. Personally, I mean, I'm going to support the 700,000 anyway, but I don't think it's a good idea to use the wastewater logic right now as a basis for a plan. I mean, that's just my opinion. You know, everything else, even the big things, have been moved off years. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm going to vote for it anyway, but I don't like it.
We actually look like it being pushed off, the decision being pushed off for a year as favorable for this, because the longer we have to put the basins in the ground and it sits prior to construction and paving, the better your end product will be.
Right. But what if it's pushed off for a year and then the data says that we've removed enough nitrogen and we're not going to do it at all?
It still would have had to been done at some point because we're not modern basins.
Aren't there roads that are in worse shape than that? I mean, that's all right. I'll let it go because I'm going to support it anyway, but so be it. Thank you.
John or Angelo? John?
A couple questions, if I may. I too am in support of the 700,000 link. It's almost, to me, it's almost like pushing the quint off. You know, we pushed off the 700,000 last year through debt. The town didn't approve the debt, so it's been pushed off now to this year. And so I approve of the 700,000. I just have a couple questions on the maintenance end of it. Is 5 Bell's Neck, is that the West Harwich School?
Yes.
Okay. I was under the impression that that building was condemned. Do you know anything about that?
Condemned? It's not condemned, certainly not usable in its current state.
So my question is, why should we put $50,000 or whatever the amount for the roof up there on a building it's not condemned, but it's not occupied? And
So Link, I'll take that one.
Yeah.
So John, the answer on that is administration is finally moving towards honoring the votes and requirements of both the Board of Selectmen and town meeting to dispose of that property. Given that the various private groups that are assembling funding, what's most appealing to them is acquiring that property with that building, and they'll take it from there. So for me, and I can only speak present going forward, obviously, but the equation for me is put aside $50,000 and use it if need be to keep that structure standing until we can sell it for a greater amount and put it off on the new owners. I've said to everybody, my concern, and I'm preparing an RFP that's going to have language, contingency language, which is difficult when you do an RFP. You don't really want to do it that way. But I'm mindful of the fact that there could be an act of God the day after I release the RFP and the building comes down. Well, I still want the RFP to be valid, and I still want the RFP to still be for us to be able to sell the land. But I think we have an obligation to see if the building can remain for the small amount of money generally we're talking about. Now, if I'm wrong, I will take my direction from the board before I give them the RFP information that I'm going to release.
Okay, I understand. I'd like to see some type of structural report though on the building, Joe. I mean, I have no way I want to spend one nickel in a building that's structurally not there.
I can go through the reports that have been done for the various efforts that my predecessors and past assistant town administrators have done. So I can pull that information together for you.
Okay, we can talk. Yeah, I agree. If we can spend 20 and get 30 for it, that's fine. But I was under the impression that building was condemned. It hasn't got an occupancy license and that sort of. We can cover that offline. The last one is the cultural center. Full-heartedly support of pressing the selectmen board on the cultural center, Joe, and getting the plan. As you know, all I'm asking is a plan. I've never seen the plan yet. So I know you're working on it. So we'll move forward on that also. Thank you.
Thank you. Angela?
Joe, just a question. That building is on land, and the land is going to come in for what, $100,000?
I think that's a fair approximation right now, perhaps.
Okay, if that's the case, it's the building doesn't really matter. It's the land that's I think people are talking about. So why should we pay $50,000 and then collect 100 when we can pay nothing and collect 100?
So the very quick answer is I've had information provided to me from various private groups where they've indicated that because again, right now I could do an RFP within the next few weeks. I can't say tomorrow because it's not that fast, but in the next few weeks where we seek proposals to lease the building because that's the current vote of town meeting and that jives with everything. We're not going to get any takers on that. And so when I re-engaged that process and started, kicking it around of whether we want to lease it or sell it, as soon as I went to the board and suggested that we do an article to change the disposition from lease to sale, I had calls from two different representatives of two different private groups, both of whom said their interest is in the building as well as the land.
I hope they've been in the building and taken a look at it, but that's okay.
I understand the point. I hope they haven't been, but I know what you mean. But no, they assured me that they have eyes wide open, and so that's why I've said to them, I don't see that RFP going out before town meeting because I think it's better to get the corrective action and go out in May. And like I said, the other part of it is, whistling past the graveyard. A stiff breeze from last night, or an act of God, or a fat pigeon could knock that building down.
That's probably a positive.
Well taken. In the meantime, this is the plan.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions for our DPW director? And again, I raced through it on the facilities maintenance, but again, I guess the overall message to everybody, and this is me now to the community through you, Capital Outlay. So you can see here now that the number is now at $7.5 million. Again, for me and every other citizen, that's a big number, but in context of where we're at, it's a significantly reduced and much more manageable number. Noreen?
And so I have no further questions on those sections, but I'm wondering if we should do a little quick housekeeping. for instance, in that section, we voted favorably for the privacy fence. So we should probably reconsider and vote to defer it. But I mean, I don't know if we want to do those activities today or not. I'm certain we voted for the privacy fence because I was against it. So that's why I remember it.
And thank you, Noreen. No, my recollection and notes are that all of the items that were under facilities maintenance were already voted on, deliberated, voted on, and acted by the committee. However, based on the discussion with the Board of Selectmen, with the directive for me to take another look at it. So what I would like to do, and again, I apologize being double booked, but what I would ask the deference of the committee at this point is, as I presented to you the latest version of the plan that's going to impact upon my overall budget message next week, and I just wanted you all to be aware of it, to have a chance to have some discussion that we've done, to also alert everybody that I will have a budget that has 2 debt exclusions in it. And as I like to say, may God have mercy on my soul as I go forward on that budget.
So I'm just trying to understand at our, whenever, I mean, do we need to go back and correct the votes that were wrong by 50,000 or wrong by, is that necessary for us, Angelo and John?
I guess technically it is necessary, but why don't we wait till our chairman
All right.
can run that through rather than us vote
Right.
on all those things that he had been part of.
Right, and I'm hoping somehow with the remote meetings, Joe, there'll be a list of what we voted before so we can fix the votes.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, great.
Thank you. And point very well taken.
I think I'll just say it's a great job, what has been. I'm not quite sure how we got there, but I think it's a lot improved since December. So thank you for all the hard work, everyone.
Joe, is it your intent to present to the selectmen Monday this budget that we've just tentatively approved right now? Is that it?
So it's my intent to give them the comprehensive budget, which is admittedly the focus is on operating budget, but also the budget message. So the fiscal year 22 budget, as I call it, the fiscal year 22 capital budget, which is what we just reviewed, as well as the fiscal year 22 to 26 plan will be incorporated in the documents and my message. And as you and Angela may recall from past years, the next steps would be not only is for the board to discuss it amongst themselves and then transmit the documents to finance committee. And, so there's going to be a lot more conversations about this, but long story short, yes, these documents will be referenced in my materials that I present Monday night.
That's good.
If you could, we'll let, if you could get me the PDFs on that, I'd just like to get them out to the finance committee. So if they want to listen in Monday, they'll have up-to-date numbers.
Yeah, my distribution on those materials for Friday is Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee, Capital Outlay Committee, finance, several other groups as well as on the website. But the distribution will be to a broad group of people.
Thank you.
Unless there's anything else, was there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Noreen?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Angelo?
Aye.
And I'm an aye 4-0. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon. Stay well.
Thank you all. Thanks, Joe.
Aye.
Aye.